It's Thursday, March 20th, 2014. This is the Hermetic Hour. I'm your host, Poke Runyon, and tonight we present a discussion on the 19th path of the Qabalistic Tree of Life called Strength. Now, this path laterally connects the Spheres of Geburah on the Pillar of Severity with Chesed on the Pillar of Mercy. The path is attributed to the letter Teth, the Serpent, and the astrological sign of Leo. And the tarot trump shows a woman gently closing the mouth of a lion. This is the key path on the lightning flash, which defines our extended middle pillar yoga system. Gareth Knight suggests that it represents the initiatory journey of an Adeptus Major, 6 equals 5, to the Adeptus Exemptus, 7 equals 4. Crowley's version of this card was called Lust, and he had the woman riding on the beast. This at least symbolizes one aspect of this path, that of conquering the beast within. The lion symbolism is also astrological and alchemical. And the heart of the lion being the marker star Regulus in the Golden Dawn sidereal system. This also relates to the Labors of Hercules. And this is an important path and the last one before Teth on the short path. So, if you want to get ready to make the big jump across the abyss, stay with us and we'll explore the path with you. Now, I've said a few things here that, in the abstract, that probably need amplification. Those of you who are looking at a Minutum Mundum Tree of Life diagram at this point, and when you're listening to these lectures, that's a pretty good idea to do that. You'll notice that the lightning flash comes down and zigzags its way down and crosses from Chesed, it comes down from Binah through Teth and hits Chesed, and then it comes back across laterally across this path. As this is one of the three girder paths, lateral paths in the Tree of Life. And it goes from Chesed to Geburah, and then it goes on down through Tiphereth. But the lightning flash follows the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It follows the numbers of the spheres. Now, I'm sure you've all seen the Serpent of Wisdom that climbs up through the paths of the trees and of the tree, and it touches each one of the paths as it goes up, and it winds its way up, and all 22 paths get touched. And this is called the path of the serpent going up. And in occultism, generally, Western occultism, it is suggested that the aspirant should work all of these 22 paths as he goes up. And we do this in the Holy Guardian Angel retreat. And so this is the path, the serpent, the long way up. Now, the middle pillar, which is Teth and Teth and Tiphereth and Yesod and Malkuth, which usually get put down the feet. That's the path of the mystics. If you want to go straight up, you go straight up that middle pillar. That's considered to be the path of the mystic, who surrenders himself to the great mystical experience and does not necessarily work his way into it except in meditation and prayer and what have you, but he doesn't use a great deal of symbolism and ritual and all of that, and he doesn't work his way up like an occultist does. Now, the lightning flash, of course, is the power coming down, because in the Western system, the emanations, following Plotinus and Gnostics and what have you, the emanations come down from the primal great light at the center of the universe, Teth, and then they differentiate and they become more and more differentiated and complex as they proceed downward, until finally, when they get to Malkuth, that's the sphere of matter. That's the Shia. That's the realm of physical matter, and then that's where the physical matter is manifested. And the idea here is that that it becomes more complex as it goes down, but it goes in order. A lightning flash is very important in this because it is the order in which the energy descends. Now, what our friend Basil Wilby, Gareth Knight, is suggesting here when he says that this 19th path that goes from Geburah, which of course has that's number 5, but Tiphareth, of course, number 6, and then Chesed over there is number 4. So what we have here is if you're going from Adeptus Major 6 equals 5 in Geburah, and you're going up to Adeptus Exemptus 7 equals 4 in Chesed, what this means is that you're going up the lightning flash. How many of you have actually considered that, going up the lightning flash? That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. That could be called the short path. The Tibetans like to say that the Mahayana is the short, that they're tantric. As elaborate as their tantric mandalas and tankas are, they like to say that this is the short path. Well, going up the lightning flash is an occult short path. It's not as short as the middle pillar going straight up the path of the mystic, but if you went up the lightning flash to the spheres, this would be the short path. And of course, I'm sure that those of you who listen to us, you're aware that we use the Interior Stars Western Psychic Center system, which is basically the lightning flash straightened out. And that provides us with our Western version of the chakras. And so going up, straight up the chakras is essentially the short path. And that's something very, very interesting to consider. Now, let's talk a bit about the actual symbolism of the path. Path's attributed to the letter Teth, which represents the serpent, and that could indicate that this is a short way to get around the serpent, if you want to think that. And the astrological sign of Leo. Now, this is very, very, very accurate, and this path is. The attributes of this path are exactly in the right place and exactly what they should be. Now, let's look back into the history of assigning the tarot to the Kabbalah. And the first person to really do that was Eliphas Levi. And he came up with a system which is very, very, very similar to the attributes that we use in the Golden Dawn. The only two differences. He put the Fool now at the bottom, and I was down below Malkuth, and he also switched strength. The path of strength attributed to Leo, he switched that with justice, switched the two paths. So he had justice running across, which was attributed to Libra, and he had that running across the 19th path running from Geburah to Chesed. Well, this really needed to be changed, and I think probably Mackenzie, who we think wrote the cipher manuscript, probably Mackenzie made the change. Mathers and Westcott could have had something to do. I don't think so. I think it was Mackenzie who realized. Well, what Mathers said later about this was that Levy really had the secret arrangement in his possession, and that his published version, he made that change, but that Levy really knew what the arrangement should have been. Well, maybe that's true. That could be true. and I know Westcott, when Westcott published his version of the Spheres of Geburah, it wasn't the same as the one the Golden Dawn had in secret. Now, I know this sounds a little nitpicky, but actually, when you consider the symbolism of Lion and Leo and Geburah over there and Chesed, and what the symbolism of these two spheres is, this is obviously this is obviously the symbolism that should go on this path. And Crowley, of course, had the priestess riding on the back of appropriately nude and holding up a goblet and smiling, riding on the back of a seven-headed beast, and he called it lust. Yeah, this is, in my opinion, this is Crowley's imbalanced way of looking at things, because the original symbolism of the woman closing the mouth of the lion, and she's doing it very gently, and the lion seems to be going along with it, symbolism for this path, because Geburah is the path of strength and action, and it's martial, and it's attributed to Mars, and it's certainly in the Pillar of Severity. So, and then over on the other side, in the Pillar of Mercy, we have Chesed, which, as you remember last week, we discussed. It's the template for paradise, whatever kind of paradise you want. I mean, it's because it's the first manifestation after the abyss. It's the first manifestation. The ruler. It's literally the ruler of the personality in the Tree of Life, and we think of it and as the holy city, and you can look at it as we like to look at it as Atlantis, and we like to think of it as Atlantis because we have a lot of astrological and mythological symbolism that goes into that. But you can also use Petalman from the Parsifal. You can use, the Garden of Eden if you're really into the Bible as it is or as it's written. So the Garden of Eden would be good. The Shambhala if you're a Buddhist, but then if you're a Buddhist, what do you have your own way of doing things. But so this is the template, and it's the ruler, and that's why Chesed is attributed to Jupiter, which is the ruler of the planets, and attributed to Zeus and Jove and whatever. So between these two, it's, well, not extremes. Actually, they work together. It's sort of like Chesed is the reserved and merciful and sympathetic king who rules everything, and over in Geburah, that's the general of his army that makes sure that his peaceful, benign decrees are enforced. So we could say we have conception and we have action. And we have conception and intention on the one side, and then we have action and resolution, physical resolution and action on the other side. We could also say that we have aggression on one side and compassion on the other side. You can see how these can work together, but they are also opposites, and yet they are complementary. They're complementary opposites. They are very much a part of the character of human beings, and they are very much a part of the combination of spirituality and animal strength that represents the human being. And so therefore we need, in this path between the two, we need to have a reconciliation. We need to have a meeting of the mind. We need to have a synthesis here that can allow these two spheres, these two parts of our personality, to work together. one contain the other, and one and the other contain the other, influences back and forth, so that the aggressive side is properly directed and controlled, and that the compassionate side is also enforced and knows that compassion and conjecture alone is not going to accomplish anything. Action has to. So these two aspects of personality have to work together. Now, that's the lion. Is a perfect symbolism for that, and the idea of the woman gently closing the mouth of the lion is perfect. I think perfect symbolism. I think it's better symbolism than Crowley's beautiful naked woman riding on the back of a seven-headed beast, but that's a little bit unbalanced. But then, and Crowley's idea was, why should we have balance? Why not? Let's have the crown and conquering child. This is the new way on. Let's go and whatever it feels like, do it. And okay, well, that's what and there's a time for that. And but I think by the time you get up to this high on the tree, that the time for that sort of thing is on the lower spheres and down there and below. So that's my opinion anyway. So the lion symbolism, as I said, is astrological and alchemical. Now, the heart of the lion being the marker star Regulus in the Golden Dawn sidereal system. Let's just talk about that a little bit, because quite frankly, there's a bit of a mystery involved in that. Regulus, as you probably know, is one of the four great marker stars of the zodiac, and it's the only one of those marker stars that is smack on the ecliptic. The others are several degrees off one way or the other, but Regulus is right on the ecliptic, and that means it is an excellent marker. Now, I'm going to read to you what Gareth Knight has to say here. The lion symbolism is also found in the spiritual significance of the path Leo the Lion. This constellation has been regarded as of fundamental importance in many esoteric systems, notably in that of the Golden Dawn, which received the astronomical system of Ptolemy of Alexandria. This system, instead of the now usual method of measuring right ascension and longitude from a supposititious point divided by the equinox and called 0 degrees Aries, considers the start of the zodiac to be the star Regulus. Calculation by this method avoids the gradual discrepancy through the years between the signs of the zodiac and the actual constellations caused by the precession of the equinoxes. Well, that's quite a mouthful. And I'm not, if Basil is listening, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not, I've got Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, and it looks to me like they're starting at 0 degrees Aries. But, I'm not going to say, you're probably right, but whatever. Anyway, this brings up a point, several points. One, the original initiatic code was Aldebaran in Taurus, the Eye of the Bull. That was, when this whole thing got started, that was right on vernal equinox, right where we are today. And by the way, happy vernal equinox, because today's the day. So way back 4,000 some years ago, Aldebaran was right smack on that vernal equinox, okay? Now, that's where it got started. But, during the precession of the equinoxes, that began to sort of slide. And we had we have this concept of the astrological ages. And if you recall, Mithra slayed the bull, and I think we are all aware that he was killing the bull of Taurus and ushering in the age of Aries. Well, okay, so Alexander became convinced that he was a god, and this is about 500 BC, and he's returning from one of his battles or whatever, and he marches his army down to Tyre, Well, Tyre is out on an island, and it's out off the coast of Lebanon. It's out on this island, and they had this beautiful, beautiful temple to Melkart, their version of Hercules. According to some people, this was the model for King Solomon's temple, and it may have been King Solomon's temple, actually, according to some people, but at least it was the model for King Solomon's temple. And so Alexander, who is convinced that he's a god, he comes marching his army down there, and he camps right across the bay from the island, and he sends a message over to the priests over on the island, and he tells them that he wants to come and make a sacrifice to Hercules in their temple. And they, the Phoenicians, they messaged him back and said, no, we're not going to permit that, but what we will do is we'll come over and erect an altar to Hercules in your camp, and we will officiate. You can make your sacrifice there. Alexander was insulted. How you don't insult a god like that. He wanted to get in that temple. And one of the reasons why he wanted to get in that temple was that was the temple of Melkart. That was the temple of Hercules. This is where the zodiac got started, and this is where the Labors of Hercules are one of the aspects of the so-called initiatic code. In other words, when you come down and get incarnated in the ancient initiatic code, you get incarnated as you come through the gate of Cancer. And then you incarnate, and you keep going around the wheel of the zodiac, and you go through all of these various, supposedly, according to tradition, you go through all of these, and those are the Labors of Hercules, and so obviously Alexander wanted to get into that temple. Yeah, reason. He wanted to get into that temple, and they wouldn't let him. So he got insulted. You don't do that to a god. And he put his whole army to work building a causeway over to the island. And they went over there, and he took Tyre, and he crucified 5,000 Phoenicians who were devotees of Melkart. And this is pretty awful. But the whole idea here is that he's really starting the age of Aries as far as he's concerned. And so, obviously, Ptolemy, when he starts establishing our system, Ptolemy was one of Alexander's boys. So he starts everything off at 0 degrees Aries. And that was, and so we operate on that. We do operate on the 0 degrees Aries, but we have to remember that the initiatic code is Leo, is Taurus. Now, however, this puts Leo right up there in the summer, and the height of the zodiac. And you remember that's one of the Numidian lions, one of the Labors of Hercules. So we got this symbolism of Leo here at the height of the power of the sun, and represents the power. And of course, the alchemical symbolism of the lion, the red lion and the white eagle, and all that. So the idea here of this tremendous, and you might call it masculine energy, because it's not a lioness, it's a lion. But then this rather attractive female woman, she closes the mouth of the lion very gently, very easily. Well, now this is a ideal symbolism for this path, as you can see, and also it relates to very, very much relates to the rulership in Chesed, the idea of the rulership. Now, to move on to some more interesting symbolism involved in this, let's consider that the treading of this path the other way, and this is what I mentioned before. The treading that I'm reading from I'm just about sitting off the ground. Excuse me, Basil, I didn't mean to do that. Gareth Knight. Treading the path the other way from Geburah to Chesed is the initiatory path of the Adeptus Major, that's in Geburah, to the adepthood of Chesed, a state of being where further incarnation in Earth is unnecessary. The realization of this path are therefore particularly profound, for they are the end result of the experience and understanding of the complete cycle of evolution. Well, now that is a non-reincarnation kind of view. But if you are, or it's a view, now if you want to take the idea that you have, let's say you've circled around the whole zodiac in your incarnations, and you've gotten all the way up, and this time you get up there to have said, yeah, you're ready to go off and become a sparkly. Okay, you can do that. But most of us haven't got all the way around yet. And so most of us will probably reincarnating. But regardless of whether we do or whether we don't, this is the jump-off point for the abyss. Okay? And because, remember, you have the veil that runs right below Tippereth, you have the veil of the sanctuary, and right across the hypothetical diosphere, that's where you have what we call the abyss. I remember we had a cartoon in the 7th grade years and years ago where these magicians were sitting on the floor, and they had this tree of life designed like a game board, and they were playing magical Monopoly, and one of them picks up a card and says, "Go to the abyss. Go directly to the abyss. Do not pass Tippereth. Do not receive enlightenment." And of course, the rest of them are grinning, and he's kind of shocked. But anyway, so here we are at the abyss. Now, what is the abyss? The abyss is a dimensional demarcation point. And above has said, actually, is if in the tree after the fall, which is what we have at the Minuta Mundum, that's the tree after the fall. It's a 10-sphere tree, and Da'ath is right there as you pass through the abyss on the way to Binah up there in Bria. It is hypothetical. And it's like, well, of course, the whole tree is hypothetical for that matter, so this is hyper-hypothetical. But there's, quite frankly, Saturn, now, you gotta understand, Saturn is the beginning of the physical universe according to the Kabbalah. You remember, it's right in the center of the cube of space. And Saturn is the beginning of the physical universe, so here we are going across this abyss, and yet we're still going to Saturn, which is the beginning. Well, that means we haven't crossed the abyss, actually, technically, but we have what we do. And the reason why that is because this tree is the tree after the fall. Now, if you remember your symbolism in the tree, up in there in Bria, you have Binah on the Pillar of Severity over there, and it's attributed to Saturn, but it's also called the realm of the fixed stars, and it's the supernal mother. It's called the supernal mother, and it's Saturn. Well, you could say, okay, it's on the female side of the tree, but it's Saturn. But Saturn has never been in any kind of symbolism, never been attributed to anything female. So, in a sense, Binah is really kind of attributing Binah to Saturn is not exactly a parsimonious correspondence. Now, how to solve this problem, and how to solve the problem of getting across the abyss to Saturn, to get this straightened out, we have to realize that there are, in essence, two trees. There's a tree after the fall, and there's a tree before the fall. Now, in the tree before the fall, and by the way, if you look in your copy of the Golden Dawn Cipher manuscript back in the back, you'll see they had a couple of 11-sphere trees, Orianic versions of 11-sphere trees. The Golden Dawn definitely was going to work on this. I don't think they ever did, but they certainly knew that they needed a tree before the fall. And in fact, they have the diagrams. If you look in the Golden Dawn, you'll find, and Rigardi actually does Rigardi's artwork of the diagrams of the tree before the fall and the tree after the fall. Okay. Now, the way we conceive this, and I'm not trying to blame this on Rigardi, this is the way we conceive this, is that the tree before the fall, Da'ath, manifests and is Saturn. We start the 11-sphere tree, and this means instead of attributing 1 to Kether, we attribute 0 to Kether, 1 to Chesed, 2 to Binah, and 3, as appropriate, to Saturn, which is Da'ath. Now, this gives you an 11-sphere tree that gives you a place, a location to actually cross the abyss and do it in a manner that is parsimonious and does fit with the philosophy. So Saturn can have its symbolism that it should have in this idea, and as you go from this to Saturn, you will be going to the abyss. And Saturn is right on the edge of the abyss, and so that's your jumping off spot. Now that is a way of handling this situation. There could be other ways of doing it, but this is what we've found to be the most parsimonious way to handle this, and still end up with the proper symbolism. Now, the middle pillar yoga system, as you remember from Rigardi. The middle pillar you draw the energy down from Kether, you draw it on down, it keeps going down, through Da'ath and the Da'ath in the head and then Tiphareth in the chest and Yesod in the genitals and Malkuth at the feet. Okay? That system has been used for hundreds, I'd say 100 years at least, and very successfully for drawing down this energy. It's different than the Eastern system. One of the major differences is that this system is astral, which is etheric. The Eastern chakra system is etheric. And now, what we have done, and it works very well, is take the lightning flash and straighten it out. And that gives us a fully operating psychic center system or chakra system. Still, we are using the Western theory of bringing celestial energy down, grounding it, and then bringing it back up. And this means that this, in between each one of these spheres, is one of the 10 paths of what we call the short way. Now, quite frankly, we're not going to say that in outer order work you shouldn't do all the paths down below, but you should be, because the paths are attributed to the elements. You should master the elements, so consequently you should do all of the paths that should be done, all the way up to Chesed, as we pointed out. So then after Chesed, the abyss, then you can start using the 11-sphere tree. But for the purposes of Hermetic yoga, you'll use the 11-sphere tree anyway. Now, the Labors of Hercules. I want to, before you guys go and open up your bullfinch mythology and try to just plot these Labors of Hercules down from what's in bullfinch, there are two different Greek versions of the Labors of Hercules, and both of them are wrong. And that isn't just my opinion. That's the opinion of everybody, including Robert Graves, that they really garbled them up. The original Labors of Melkart, the Labors of Hercules, were depicted probably in that temple that Alexander wanted to get into in the worst way. And so he couldn't get into it, he tore it down. But I think he probably did. Eventually, get a look at it. But the Labors of Hercules need to be reinterpreted, and we have some we have some speculations along that line. Now, another thing that I want to point out regarding this path is that here again, we don't want to, unless you're sure that you've completed all of the labors and you are ready to go off and just merge with the Godhead. If you really are sure that that's where you're at, then for heaven's sake, do so. But otherwise, you're entitled to use this system to advance yourself to another incarnation. And you're also using the same idea now that we discussed in our show where we discussed immortality. You recall we mentioned that the idea, the whole thing behind the Shambhala Kala Chakra initiation was to take this bodhisattva vow to be reborn in Shambhala as a warrior of Rudra Cochrane's army that was going to come swarming up from the caverns below and wipe out all the enemies of the Buddhist faith. That you were when you took that vow at the end of the 9-day Kala Chakra thing, that you were signing up for the Dalai Lama's spiritual foreign legion. Yeah, well, that's actually the Toku process, and this is one of the reasons why in Chesed, that's where if we were, if Buddhists were climbing our tree the way we do, they would have Shambhala in Chesed. That would be their, So the idea there is that then you would pledge yourself to be reborn in Shambhala and to come back and continue your work. So essentially, that's the basic idea of the Toku process, and that's the basic idea of the holy city. When you start to think about it, every religion, and even every magical system that has something like that, they have a holy city. And the Rosicrucians, of course, they have Mount Abiyagus, and then in the Parsifal, we have this 16-gate city called Petalmund, which is the paradise city in the Parsifal. And the Christians have the New Jerusalem. And we, of course, the Hermetic, our version of the Hermetic tradition, the Quadrupolar version, we use Atlantis. And so every one of these religions, you have a paradise, but the paradise is not just a place where you rest and it isn't a place where you just rest and enjoy yourself and play a harp and see and feel the feathers of the angels. That's not what a magical paradise is supposed to be. Magical paradise is an ideal community that you go to and continue your work. Yeah, work never stops. And then you seek to be reborn in this community to continue the work that you're doing. Again, on a more physical dimension. In other words, Chesed of Malkuth, or you might say, the come back and do your work better. Now, this is one of the very few ways that we know that the Toku process works. Because one of the things that we have to remember, as much as we might, as magicians, enjoy our ego and our personalities and our making a god out of yourself and all of that. Yes, but you got to remember that in order to be more than human, you got to be more than one human. So you really have to, if you're going to really advance, you have to become a representative, in a sense, of your group, of your family, your tribe, your nation, your whatever, and expand it all the way. If you really think about it, expand it to humankind. Then you are really becoming more and more godlike, because the more you can identify with all these people, that are around you, and the more that they can look at you and they see the God within you, and you see the God within them. You are becoming more and more godlike. Now, I know some people, when I'm saying this, you may think that oh well, he's just some transcendental, and me, I don't want to become like everybody else, and and I don't want to lose myself in some great cause or something like that. But that is, when you think about it, if you just stay just within yourself, if you're, and I know the great I am is the whole universe, we know that, but the flip side of that, the paradox of the great I am being the center of the universe, the flip side of it is that if the great I am doesn't expand and become the universe that it's the center of, then the great I am is going to stultify. It's the same way we say about drawing down godly power. You can draw it down into yourself, but if you just keep it into yourself, it's like filling yourself with water that's going to go stale and stagnant. But if you let that water, or that Holy Spirit, or that energy, that supernal spark of energy flow through you, it increases more and more and more. The more you give it away, to your friends, your family, your group, your church, the people around you. The more you give it away, the more powerful it gets, and the bigger you get. And if you're looking for power, I got to tell you, I hate to admit it, but this is the path to power, because I don't want to mention names of great conquerors, but I think you can imagine without my naming some of these people. They embodied, these great leaders, these great powerful men and women. They embodied their people. They became the will of their people. And they didn't lose any of their will doing it, but they became not just the representatives of their people, but they became, in some instances, the very soul of their people. Now, that's power. That is power. And sometimes that power is not used for good. And that's one of the problems, that's one of the things about magic that we have to realize. That even magic of light, even the magic of light, the magic of beauty, the magic of compassion, and all this can be misused. And some of these godlike individuals that we can think of have terribly misused this power, and yet the people believed in them, and they believed that what they were doing was from their point of view, was right. But so that's one of the dangers of magic. One of the dangers of this whole process, and it's one of the things that we don't like to admit, but it's the truth. However, keep in mind, selfishness keeps you very small. And when you get right down to it, you know what hell really is? Hell is loneliness. Hell is being all by yourself. And heaven is in a sense, is fulfilling your satisfaction and your desire, and having the sympathy and the love of other people. Love is what holds the whole universe together. And so selfishness is not the route. It isn't even the route to power. And that's something that the black magicians and the people who are entirely self-centered, they will understand that. And that power, any kind of power, is your being bigger than yourself. You're being able to give to the universe, and give to the people, and give and bring joy and happiness to other people, bring hope to other people. this is power, and this is good power, or it can be misused. And yet, this is the way it is. Omar, the tent maker, said, "I sent my soul into the afterlife to tell, and by my soul returned to me and said, I myself am heaven and hell. Heaven, a division of fulfilled desire, and hell with the shadow of the soul on fire." Yeah, selfishness and loneliness is hell, ultimate hell, and being loved and giving and loving more and more and more of your fellow human beings, seeing their souls lighting up and communicating with yours, that's to be desired, to be power. So it sounds like I've been preaching, but then on the other hand, this is something that needs to be said about this path and the whole process of Chesed and the whole process of going on from Geburah to Chesed and being able to then pass over the abyss and go where you need to go. I know some of the things I say may be a little disturbing, or maybe a little bit thought-provoking, but meditate on it, and I think that you'll at least get an idea of what the ultimate end of the magical process is. Now, next week we're going to have a real treat. Lady Jo Carson, the Avitrix of Ferraferia, is going to, and she's preparing a really, really detailed and inspired lecture on the Eleusinian mysteries. And this is one of the great ancient mystery schools that, frankly, is still in some ways a mystery. And Jo, of course, is the direct cella and recipient of the mantle of Fred Adams and Svetlana Buterin of Ferraferia, and she has done a wonderful book on the Ferraferian experience, which she'll talk about. And so, next week, be sure and tune in, and we will have Jo Carson, and we'll have the Eleusinian Mysteries. And until then, good magic.